Hi, Deborah K here. A special episode of Simply Stated for the Public, episode 21, season 3. Normally this season would all be on OnlyFans, but with the death of Charlie Kirk last night here in the United States, on the eve of 9/11 here in the U.S., I decided it would be good to do a special show and talk about him and his life. Who was Charlie Kirk? Because I live in the D.C. area and was a journalist there, all sorts of public relations and then healthcare, and was there from 2002 to 2021. I attended CPAC regularly. I knew all the people at the different think tanks. I knew people on the left and the right, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, otherwise. And I never met that guy. I really don't know him. I think I met him like once at an event at CPAC. And what I saw was not good. So he was supposed to be 31 years old. Most people I knew thought he was in his 40s. He was supposed to be happily married and have a kid. And he was also supposed to be the founder of Turning Point USA, which focused on academic freedom. Now, and his only job as somebody who was literally living like what, the American dream, was to speak for a living and to be a pundit. I checked on this with some other sources and other people as well as what I saw myself. He was not a Rush Limbaugh. He was not somebody who spoke effusively, shared his opinions, and enlightened people. He was someone who, frankly, shared misguided opinions, sounded as if he was somebody from the 90s. As far as his understanding of current day events, people, he spent a lot of time labeling, and frankly sounded like a Russian obfuscationist. Worse, I would call him an agent provocateur. He was founded and funded by Peter Thiel and Foster Friess, who, Foster Friess is now dead, and Peter Thiel, it was announced yesterday, and this is really important. Senator Ron Wyden and Democrat of Oregon asked for a probe from the Senate Commerce Committee into Peter Thiel's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, who invested $40 million into Thiel's company and is also considered to have been a client of Jeffrey Epstein's. So one of his major funders was actually someone that had worked with and received money from Jeffrey Epstein and was more than likely a client from Jeffrey Epstein as well. Now, as somebody who went through some labor trafficking and sex trafficking in my life, I'm going to tell you something. I was asked to go and talk to this guy like once in my whole life at CPAC, and I went up to him and I talked about my situation at Luther College and how horrible it was and what I'd been through and how I was raped and abused there. And he started screaming at me and said I was the problem. And so I just went, whoa, backed off. And later, another policy person, some other people wanted to meet with me and talk to me about it, both from the U.S. government. Otherwise, I said, this guy is crazy. He can't have a show. He's too mentally ill to have a show, people. And I said it just like that. I was like, he's too mentally ill to have a show. Like, that kind of person just doesn't belong out there as a pundit. And you have to understand there was an absolute rage fest of pundits being born out of the 2010 era in Washington, D.C., who turned out to mostly be funded by Russia and China as part of the next step in Russia and China, the Russian FSB and Chinese CCP trying to take over media in the U.S. And what's important to know about that is that it's important to understand that he wasn't somebody who was actually well-liked or even considered a good conservative. Now, I'm going to give you some names of people who actually were good conservatives on those issues and really respected in the policy world as well, and by journalists. And that would be Morton Blackwell of the Leadership Institute, who has trained a number of writers, artists, thinkers, engineers to understand academic freedom in the U.S. and done it really well for a really long time, like decades. And then you can research that all yourself. And then also David Horowitz, who founded Students for Academic Freedom, which a person I knew like 20 years ago, Sarah Dogan, used to work for. And she and her husband moved back to Missouri, but both men are very solid thinkers and opinion makers and opinion producers on those issues and really good at it. And they both understood my situation with Luther College and the labor traffic I was going through and the problems I was currently having with gangs, even at that time, Washington, D.C. area, and were sympathetic to it. Morton himself took money from his donors to have me go to classes, actually, and learn more about communications, fundraising, my civil rights, event planning, and all that stuff. Literally paid for it out of his donors' money because he actually believed me and believed in me. I had a similar amount of support from David Horowitz's people, though they didn't have as much money to spend, but they definitely believed and understood me. They certainly never yelled and screamed at me and said I was the problem. But this guy, Charlie Kirk, is that even his real name? Like, that guy was not somebody that I would call a respected thinker. Definitely not a Rush Limbaugh either. Not an entertainer who caused you to think more about life and understand it more, you know? And I say all that because back in 2024, when TMZ was actually up in the Traverse City area and I was working at Panera Bread, Fatina, the woman you know as Fatina, she also goes by the name Jackie Wilkie out of Luther College in Iowa and is a part of El Tren de Aragua, and the Russian FSB said she was going to kill him. So the FBI knew that she was planning to kill him, that El Tren de Aragua was planning to kill him. The Department of Labor knew that they were planning to kill him, and the Department of Justice knew they were planning to kill him. The other question is, where was his security yesterday? Because he comes from a very well-funded organization with like 2 guys, millions of dollars, and nobody bothered to actually protect him among his own. I also need to know that there may not be anything more weird than Megyn Kelly, who got fired from Fox News, now posing as Caitlin Collins on CNN, pretending to care about his death because she's part of the weird Russian net group out of MS-13 that keeps setting up murders across the U.S. and then trying to cover them, pretending that they're like actually legitimate journalists, right? Because a legitimate journalist doesn't set up people to be murdered and then cover it. That's just laziness and weird. It means you're a serial killer. So you understood some of the funding now. The Foster Freeze that died in 2021, was that? Or 2020? Was it 2021 or 2020? Whatever. He died, and he left a lot of money, actually. Notably, he went to UW-Madison. He was worth $800 million when he passed away, and was once named Humanitarian of the Year. It's very suspicious about his passing and the amount of money that was left to Turning Point USA at the point that happened. And it's important to consider that Charlie Kirk was just never known as a true conservative among the people who knew him. So the news looks crazy. And the worst part is that I think the host of The Five on Fox said that Greg Gutfeld said that